All right, now finally we're going to talk about the law of sines. Let me write down what it is. There's a couple ways you could write it, and depending on what you're trying to solve for is depending on which one of these forms of the law of sines I'm going to use. Watch, you could write it like this, and this should be a little bit familiar to you because we did this last year in geometry. So you could write it like this: a over the sine of a. Now a representing what? Little a, or baby a, as that guy said. Okay, little a representing what? The side, right? Side a, and then of course capital A, which represent the angle. All right, everybody understands that. So this would be side b over the sine of a. Is this coming back to you from last year? I'm not saying you have to have perfect knowledge of it and know how to use it just from last year's geometry, but at least that should look a little familiar to you, does it? It doesn't look familiar to it at all? Oh my goodness, yeah, we did it. All right, I promise we did it last year. Who remembers it? Okay. Absolutely. I was just seeing if you were paying attention. Good job. You win the prize for today. Actually, I just messed up. Okay, so thank you for that. So there you go. There's a law of sines. You could write it like this, or you could switch it around. It doesn't make any difference. You could write the sine of A over A equals the sine of angle B over side B equals the sine of angle C over side C. You could write it either way. Which one would I pick? Well, it depends what I'm trying to solve for. Whatever I'm trying to solve for, like if I'm trying to solve for a side, I would use the one that the side's on the top. It makes your algebra just a little bit easier. Does that make any sense? So if I'm trying to solve for a side, one of the little letters, the lowercase letters, I would use one of these. Okay? If I'm trying to solve for an angle, it's a lot easier having the angle on top, isn't it, than on the bottom when you're doing your algebra, right? Where your variable on the top than on the bottom. So if I'm solving for an angle, I'm going to use one of these. You could just stick with one and use it every single time. I just think it's kind of easy to, depending on what you're solving for, put what you're solving for on top. I think it's a lot easier algebraically to solve for it if whatever you're solving for is on the top and not on the bottom. Does that make any sense? It may not right now, but when you see things going on here, hopefully it'll make sense. All right, let's take a look. First of all, look what I have here. I've got two angles in this triangle. Without using law of sines, without doing anything fancy at all, what's one thing? I'm gonna try to solve for everything in this triangle right here eventually. All right, so I could solve for angle A very, very easily. What's the process there? Come on, talk to me. I got two angles. How could I solve for angle A? Really simple. No trig, no nothing. What is it? That's right, 180 minus 80 minus 45. So let's write that down. So angle A is 180 minus 80 minus 45. So 180 minus 80 is 100. 100 minus 45 is 55. All right, so angle A is 55 degrees. So we could put that right there. Did everybody see how easy that is? Sure you did. Okay, you're probably looking for something way more difficult, aren't you? All right, maybe it just went over your head because it was so easy right in front of you. So if I know two angles, obviously I'm going to find that third angle just by subtracting them both from 180. We good so far? Now, on the law of sines, what we want to try to do is we want to try to find a side and an angle that are opposite each other. So look at this situation. Do I have an angle and do I know its opposite side anywhere here? Well, I know all three angles, but do I know an angle and its opposite side? Yes. Sure I do. The 80 and the what? And the 3. That's what I'm going to start off with, okay? Now, it depends on what you want to solve for. Let's just go in alphabetical order. Let's solve for A. Is that all right? So let's solve for A. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I said first thing I was going to do was this, but I'm going to look. I want to look for an angle and a side that I know that's opposite that angle. So I'm definitely going to use this. I'm solving for A, so I'm definitely going to use these two that are opposite each other. Now, which one would I use? Would I use this top format or would I use this bottom format right here? I'm trying to solve for side A. Yeah, I would use the top one because I'm trying to solve for side A. That's on top. It just makes it kind of easy. So watch. I'm going to put A over the sine of angle A. Now, do I know the sine of, or do I know angle A? Sure I do. It's 55. So I can just put that right there. Equals, now look, there's 4 different things to this. Now, I wrote 3. I kind of made an assumption here. I should go back. I wrote 3 different things here. We're only going to pair them up. All right, we're either going to go a over sine of a equals b over sine of b, just use those pairings, or use these pairings right here, or use this one and this one, the a and the c. Does it make sense? We're not really going to use all three. I saw a guy last night on YouTube, and he actually used all three. I thought that was way more confusing. So I'm just going to pair up any of the ones here that I can use. So a over sine of a equals what? I need to know the next two. 3 over sine of 80. Okay, so 3 over the sine of 80. Now this is where it's kind of nice. If I would have used this, the a would have been on the bottom. I'd cross multiply. I can do that. It's just a little bit more algebra than I really want to do. Since a is already on top, all I got to do is just get rid of the sine of 55. How do I get rid of that? Just multiply it, right? Multiply it by the sine of 55. The sine of 55 is just a number. So if it's a divided by this, how do I get rid of something that's being divided? I multiply. So I multiply both sides. Now check this out. I just chuck all this into a calculator, and I'm good to go. Let's pull the calculator up here. Okay, so let's plug this in the calculator. So I've got 3 sine of 55. Where's the sine? Right there. Sine 55. I don't think you need a parentheses, but I like to put it there. Divided by the sine of 80. So sine of 80. Close that. There we go, 2.49. So that's what, or we'll just say 2.5. Everybody okay over there? So 2.5. So A is 2.5. So that's one side right there. Good enough. Let's just punch that in. Let's do this. Let's solve for B now. All right? Same idea. Pretty much the same situation. Let's solve for B. I'm trying to solve for B, so I put B on top over the sine of the angle that's opposite side B, which is 45 degrees. Equals, look, we could use this one and this one, but look at 2.5. 2.5 is not exact, is it? I could use it. I could get really, really close. It probably wouldn't be a big deal. I like to use the original information as much as I possibly can. Is that all right? So let's do this again. So b over sine of 45. Now I'm going to go 3 over sine of 80. The math is exactly the same. Multiply both sides by the sine of 45. And now just plug that into the calculator. Let's see what we get. Bring the calculator up. Where is the calculator? There it is. Scooch it over. And let's put that in. So now it's 3 sine of 45 divided by sine of 80. Again, I don't think you have to close the parentheses. It just looks prettier if you do. All right, so it's 2.15 or what? 2.2 we'll go. So B is 2.2. So check it out. We've solved for everything, didn't we? We solved for the missing angle, we solved for the two missing sides, and then we solved the triangle. And there you go. All by the law of sines.
I didn't close the parentheses.
Oh, really? Oh, so you might have to close the parentheses then. I always like to do that just because, just like to be safe. Better safe than sorry, right? All right, there are different versions of this. There's this version right here, I gave you two angles and I gave you what? One side, right? There are different situations where I give you two sides and an angle. That's where it gets a little tricky. When you have this situation right here, it's pretty straightforward, pretty basic. There are situations where they give you one angle and two sides. The process is still the same, but there are times when something crazy will happen, all right? Sometimes you'll get an error, all right, depending on the situation. We're going to talk about this in more detail tomorrow. Sometimes you'll get no solutions and you'll get an error on the calculator. Sometimes you get one solution for that particular angle or that particular side, and that's fine, like we did here. And sometimes you actually get two different solutions for the same triangle. It's kind of weird, but that's what we're going to discuss tomorrow. If I can get it all straight, I'll have to practice tomorrow teaching it. So it's kind of weird to understand. What's that? Not really well, and I'm trying to do it really well this time. All right, so we'll see how it goes. All right, they call that the ambiguous case. Isn't that a crazy word? Oops, it's not AB. It's A. Ambiguous. If you want to look at that online, ambiguous, U-O-U-S, ambiguous. I spelled that right. It just looks kind of weird. Okay, it's called the ambiguous case for the law of sines. If you want to look it up online, you can. If you go to my YouTube site, I like subscribed or whatever to like I think 3 people. Like one of them is Khan, and then there's 2 other teachers on there. If you look, I forget the guy's name now. It's like the second subscriptions right after Khan. If you go to there and you look up the law of sines, he actually does a pretty good job. And in fact, I'm thinking about maybe just showing his. I'll show you my version of it and then show you his and see if it makes any sense to you. All right. Okay. Oh, you want some homework, right? Okay, here's your homework right here. What I want you to do is last night's stuff with the law of cosines. There were probably some sides or angles you couldn't do because you had to know the law of sines to do it, and you couldn't do it with the law of cosines. Go back on those. Try to get all the missing things that you weren't able to get yesterday. Does that make sense? So it's probably not every one of them. There's probably just a handful of them towards the end. So try to get that finished, and then do these as well. This is just all law of sines. There's no law of cosines in here at all. All right, this is just all law of sines. All right, so have both of those ready for me tomorrow if you would. All right, that's it.